Hey there, how's it going? It's LordTron1892, and today we're going to be going over Lords of the Fallen. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. Lords of the Fallen is a dark fantasy action-adventure RPG with heavy inspiration from Dark Souls games. It features a two-world system that allows you to keep playing even after death, with a chance of resurrection as long as you make it to the save point. And here lies my problem with the game. It doesn't have a clear direction of what it wants to be. It is marketed as a Souls-like, but it only embraces the negative aspects of Souls games. The developers are actively patching the game to make the overworld easier and trying to make the bosses more of a challenge. I love the world of Lords of the Fallen. It is beautiful, enormous, and at times breathtaking. The lore of the game is complex but understandable, and the character development of the main cast is worth their own movie. Where they seem to fuck it up is by trying to copy Dark Souls' stupid quest design. The quests in this game are aggravating due to the structure that breaks the quest by simply playing the game. It is as if when planning out the quest, the thought was, what is the player's intended path and how can we punish them? I hate having to look up a guide to do a simple quest and later to find out that the quest has failed because you didn't instinctively know you had to jump 3 squares in front of a tree while drinking a potion and then killing 2 enemies. I understand that's how it's always been, but why does it continue to need to be this way? Why not innovate? Why not design your quest for enjoyment? The same thing can be said for the DLC quest. The current DLC quest is the Way of the Bucket. How the flying fuck are you supposed to figure out the bucket quest since there's nothing in the game that tells you anything about it? Not even the emote that you find on the ground has anything in the description about the quest. The only way you can find out about the quest is if you go through an external source and read the patch notes. This information should instead be placed in the item description of the emote. The level design can be broken down into 2 sections, the base game and New Game Plus. In the base game, the level design is amazing. It's a giant world with many different areas, great views, tons of explorations, and secrets to uncover. Their inspiration comes from Dark Souls 1, which was a very tight level design where you were always routed back to the starting hub area, which makes the world seem very interconnected since there was no method of teleportation. Now, Lords of the Fallen tried to imitate this by removing vestiges or teleport locations in New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus. But the world of Lord of the Fallen is too big for this to work, especially since the quest designs have you running around the whole ass map for a simple quest. In the base game, it doesn't hurt the game since you can just simply teleport back to the main area and then use shortcuts. But in New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, that shit's fucking annoying and doesn't add anything to the game. All it does is piss people off. Playing through New Game Plus is also very boring since by the end of the main game you end up being extremely overpowered. The enemies and bosses are not properly tuned for your new power level in New Game Plus, so you just end up steamrolling through everything, sucking all the enjoyment out of the game. The gameplay is done very well. I had no issues with it. Some people have criticized the amount of forward momentum attacks have, calling it floaty. But in my opinion, it wasn't an issue. I used it to my advantage since I played with grand hammers, so I would charge the attack out of range and then have the momentum move me in. There is seamless integration between light and heavy attacks, allowing players to create their own combinations. The magic spell system has moved the genre forward by allowing the players to essentially hotkey the spells to a button and make it use more naturally. I hope other developers adopt the system since cycling through spells is outdated. There is a vast catalog of armor, weapon, and spells to help you craft your very own build and express your creativity. A lot of people have criticized the number of enemies in areas, and to be honest, I did not get the same impression at all. The amount of enemies was fine. The game gave you more than enough tools to deal with a large amount of enemies. The dual wield system is implemented to clear enemies that are surrounding you, and the two-handing is more for dealing damage to a single target. Now combine that with the ranged projectiles that replenish at vestiges and the magic system that has its own mana pool, enemy density is never an issue, just people refusing to use all the tools the game has provided. Now let's address the elephant in the room, difficulty. At launch, the game had difficult levels but pushover bosses. To me, that meant that the main focus of the game was its exploration and enemy density. But as time went on, more and more patches got released, the developers starting to adjust the perceived difficulty of the levels by manipulating enemy placement and density, turning this game into baby's first Dark Souls. The bosses in this game are far too easy. You can realistically beat any boss on your first try. My favorite boss at launch was Kingar Guardian Folard, since at launch it was the only boss that got more difficult if you died. Now I've been asking myself, why are the bosses so easy? And what makes me dislike the boss encounters? And this is what I've come up with. The attacks in this game are telegraphed way too easily, allowing you to instinctively dodge out of enemies' attacks even if it's your first time seeing them, especially with the overtuned dodge roll that makes you escape combat far too easily. The fight tempo is too slow and has heavy downtime. In Souls games, boss fights are normally intense and have a flow to them, making it more of a dance. The bosses in this game are more like regular action RPG bosses. Most boss fights in this game have a gimmick to them. The gimmick being items or the arena or the umbral parasites that exist that help you throughout the fight. You cannot die from blocking or taking wither damage. This game has a 2 lives mechanic. Whenever you die in the world of Axiom, you resurrect in the world of Umbral. Now, other games have done this in the Dark Souls genre like Sekiro. Sekiro had the same thing, but because the fights were so intense and demanding, it didn't hinder the game. The Eye of Loesh shouldn't be in this game. This item is intended for late game use as it gives you hyper armor and lets you charge a heavy attack, but it's available within the first hour of the game. Any damage you take while charging is applied as wither damage, like blocking, and can be earned back by attacking, but when you hit with your charge attack, you essentially replenish all the damage you've taken. So you can just stand there, charge your heavy attack, get hit, replenish your health, and rinse and repeat. It really takes everything away out of the fights. The secondary bosses or mini bosses that later turn into regular enemies, their poise hasn't been adjusted to be bosses, where you can really easily just break their poise and just stun lock them. Difficulty in games is always subjective, but when you throw a name like Souls-like, it elevates the player's expectation of the game. The biggest detriment to this game is it wanting to be a Souls-like. Had this game just gone for a classic action-adventure RPG, it would have been an amazing game. If you are a fan of Souls games, because you enjoy their difficulty, you will not enjoy this game. It's too easy and New Game Plus does not add any more challenge, especially since you already have the fight knowledge. In a Souls game, the first playthrough is always the best because you are discovering everything and you can still be surprised. If you are a fan of dark fantasy RPGs, then I can recommend this game. I loved my time with Lords of the Fallen. I played it for about 120 hours. I did all 3 endings with 2 characters. The most fun I had was during the base game though. New Game Plus was not balanced and I steamrolled through everything, so I just made a new character for my 3rd playthrough. I would have loved for this to have been a good and difficult Souls-like experience, especially since we didn't get any news for Elden Ring DLC at the Games Award, and Black Myth Wukong is still a ways out. And thank you for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe button, I really do appreciate it. Let me know in the comment section, what are your thoughts about the game? Am I completely off base with my thoughts about this game? Is this an actual Souls game experience, or is it more of just a regular RPG? Once again, shout out to IGGN for sponsoring the channel. Their information can be found in the description.